The Libertarians believe that nations do not go to war, politicians go to war.
The Honourable John Ruddick.
Mr. President. Now, I have known Chris Rath for 12 years, the Honourable Chris Rath. And initially we were factional allies. Then we were factional opponents. But the truth is, I didn't really know him very well. Now, coming to this place, I have to say I am immensely impressed with Chris Rath. I think he is a real asset for the opposition and a credit to the entire chamber. And even though I have no say in Liberal Party pre-selections going forward, I hope he's pre-selected for many years to come. Chris is a classical Liberal. He is not a Libertarian. Now, there is a lot of overlap between classical Liberals and Libertarians. One area where we do not overlap is the question of war. We Libertarians are distrustful of government and politicians, and the classical Liberals never think twice about going to war. They never have any regrets about war. The Libertarians believe that nations do not go to war, politicians go to war. Now, we saw that when after the horrible war, World War I, World War II, with Germany and Japan. A lot of Germans came to this country, a lot of Japanese came to this country, and they very quickly melt in and become Australians overnight. So it's the people like each other. It's egotistical politicians who whip themselves up in their messiah complexes, and they go to war, and almost always war is unnecessary. Now, Chris, of course, Chris said, "Oh, we don't want to be appeasing. We've got to build up our arms to bring about peace." He's just all these strategic geniuses. They look at history through one little episode of history, Germany in the 1930s, and that was in a very extraordinary period of history. There are thousands of other episodes from history from which we should learn about our strategic outlook. Okay, let's get into it. Now, look, everyone is obsessed with World War II. You know, they've watched Hollywood. Chris has even read Wikipedia and watched the History Channel. But there's another war, the war that started World War II, which is World War I. Now, what happened in the 2 decades before World War I? Arms build-ups across Europe and military alliances. So we're building up. You know, Germany doesn't trust Britain. Germany doesn't trust France and Russia. And it just builds up alliances, arms. Everyone's armed to the teeth. Hadn't been a big war in Europe since for 100 years. And then a freak little event happened down in Sarajevo, which should have just been another Balkans war. It erupted because of all these alliances and arms built up into the most pointless war in history. 20 million deaths. Everybody lost from World War I. The British Empire came apart. Russia became Soviet. Germany ended up becoming a Nazi state, all because of the crisis of World War I, the unnecessary war, World War I. Now, when we watch Chinese media, do you know what they say all the time in the Chinese media? You can read it in English language. They say the West is surrounding them. The West is building up military alliances against them. We've got to counteract it. Now, we never hear about that, but our media says the same thing. Our government say the same thing. China's expansionist. Now, I'm telling you, there is one country in the world, there's 200 countries in the world, there's one country which we should all emulate, and that is a little country called Switzerland. 500 years ago, Switzerland said, we're not going to do war. Now, they've all got guns. They've all got self-defence. Nobody has invaded Switzerland. I cannot understand why the rest of the world says, why at least one other country hasn't said, well, why don't we do what Switzerland does? Australia should be the Switzerland. Australia should be the Switzerland of the Pacific, okay? We're a Western country. We've got Asia-Pacific geography. The more we integrate with America,
the member's time has expired. As interesting as your oration was, we must move on. Anybody else seeking the call?
I'd like to thank all of the contributions on this debate, to the Honourable John Ruddick in particular, who I have known for a very long time, for 12 years. I think he is right in saying that we do at times look at everything in an international relations perspective from the perspective of World War II, that every war from 1945 onwards is viewed in a prism of good and evil. Whereas if you go and look at the wars before World War II, they weren't often about good and evil. They were about geopolitics. There was no real good and evil in the 7 Years' War or the Spanish War of Succession. It was about power, it was about land, it was about a whole host of different things, but often not good versus evil. And that is very much a post-World War II concept. So we do have to acknowledge that, and I think that was an important point.